Hello, good morning. I'm Mr. Elad. I've come your way once again with part two of our lessons on Sostac. In the previous lessons, we had to understand the acronym and also work it alongside with SWOT. Now, in this part, I'm going to introduce the components for Sostac. Um, in a brief description of each component, I will start off by saying that Shafi and Smith in 2013 explained that each component represents a stage in the cycle of planning, and each stage is of equal importance to successful marketing, planning, implementation, and review. These are the words of Shafi and Smith in 2013. But just to emphasize the main points that they mentioned, that in describing each component in the Sostac, we need to understand that they represent a cycle of planning and they have equal importance, which are successful to marketing planning, implementation, and review. So please take note of these three major areas. And let me continue by saying that the objective for our lesson today is to visit each of the variables in the Sostac and then get to know exactly what to do when we pick each of them in the planning process, because we need to plan our marketing strategy and of course not forgetting advertising. So if you pick each of the variables, understand what you need to do, and in understanding it we need to follow the principles as outlined in the next slide. So let's look at stage one. Stage one is situation analysis. That is the first S in the Sostac. What do we do about the product or the service that we want to advertise? What is the status of the company and the product or the service? Where are we now? That is the first question you have to ask yourself, because your status as a company or as a product, a service, takes 20% of your planning time, and you have to ensure that you are really on top of that, because it determines the performance and how you perform eventually. If you don't know where you are, how would you be able to determine where you want to go? And this is where you have to consider the next point, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, SWOT, because there are competitors in the system and you need to know what kind of threats they are bringing your way, what kind of challenges they may be posing against you, what are the distinctive competitive marketing advantages that you have over your competitors? Are there any unique selling propositions that you have? What are those distinct attributes about your product that other companies or other products, other brands for that matter, do not have? How effective is your marketing mix? And this is one key thing that you have to look at. It is a grave concern to marketers. Of course, the price, the product, the place, the promotion. These are four P's in the marketing mix, and you have to consider them and know exactly where you stand and what you are going to do with them. Are we focusing on the best segments with the right type of customers? So you have to also consider your customers. Of course, there's a need for communication channels, but we'll look at that, especially at the tactics and the action plan. So let's move on. Now, stage two, we need to look at objectives, because the O in Sostac is objectives. That stands for objectives. Where do we want to go? It's still about the goal. It's about the target. It's about what you want to achieve. And that takes about 5% of your planning time. Now, what is your business mission and vision? What is your business objectives? What are the marketing objectives that you have set out for yourself? In some jurisdictions, they will say business development. And of course, it's ideal to know what your business model is all about. Marketing communication objectives must also be considered. So as for mission and vision statement, I'm sure every company would have it, but in terms of your brand and what the brand stands for, the brand character, the brand equity, the brand value, and all of those things, you need to know exactly what you want to achieve with your brand. So what are your business objectives? Okay, please, let's take note of these areas. And then the next one is stage 3. The S, or the second S in Sostac, stands for strategy. Now, what strategy are you going to adopt? In strategy, we need to consider the following principles. How do we get there? Okay, in terms of strategy, you need to consider the segmentation of the market. How do we want to divide up the markets? Why? Because the market is made up of either heterogeneous markets or consumers, or homogeneous. And you need to, of course, look at the homogeneous first. So what are the similar characteristics that you can find with your audience? If your audience are young people between the ages of 18 to 35 years, then what are the characteristics? What are the attributes? What are the things that these young people like or dislike? How can you, bring to them what they need and present to them what the product can actually do for them, how your brand can satisfy them. Now remember that there are other markets. Sometimes there are new markets, sometimes there are ethnic minority groups, sometimes there are very unique markets. Some can be active users, some can be passive users, some can be, occasional users, whatever. But you need to identify them and then target them. So it comes to the target. We come to the target where you have to target the markets as you have segmented them, or as you have grouped them. Okay, and then by positioning, it is ideal to now position your product, pitch your product to that particular audience that you have segmented or actually decided to reach. Okay, and how do you want to be perceived in each different target market? Now, whichever market you segment or you target, you have to actually ensure that they perceive your brand to be a good brand. Their mindsets, their perceptions, and all of those things must be worked on. So your business strategy must be directed towards your audience in the right perspective. Make sure that they have a good perception, a good mindset about your brand. Make sure that they are loyal to your brand, they like it, or you can make it more attractive to them. Now, moving on, we want to look at the fourth one, which is tactics. Now, the tactics should develop a tactical plan as to how you are going to actually overcome the threats and probably the weaknesses that you have, and look at how the competitors are also presenting their tactics, so that you can actually create a counter activity or strategy that can overcome them. Now, how do we implement the strategy, and which communication tools are we going to use? How are we going to use them? And these are basic questions you need to ask yourself. What messages do we wish to communicate? And of course, the message you send across is very, very important. The idea here is that what you say to your audience tactically can get them attracted to you, can make them change their preference from an unusual brand or a usual brand to your brand. It can make them switch, it can make them change and then rather adopt your product. So you have to, of course, work on your promotional message very, very well. Do not just gloss over it. Do not keep it as a casual activity. No, make it a very serious one and come well to your audience with a good message. Are we being consistent across different tools and messages? So consistency is key when it comes to presenting your message. Of course, you are going to use different media outlets, so you have to ensure that your message is consistent throughout all these outlets. Do we have the necessary resources and the budget? Very important. You need to ask yourself this question and start off with a good budget, a dedicated budget, or in advertising, we call it the advertising appropriation, which is the total lump sum of money that is devoted for the advertising campaign or the marketing project. So you have to ensure that that is available. Now, look at the fifth variable, which is action. What will be the action plan? Who and what and when are we going to do the things we need to do? Who are we targeting? That has been defined already. What do we want to say? We have done that already by our tactical plan and the message that we want to put across. And then when do we want to say it? So you need to consider the season that you want to roll out your advertising campaign and the marketing strategy and all that. Who is going to do what? Now, this is where you actually have to put things on paper. You need something like a checklist to help you go through the steps and ensure that every step, every activity that is supposed to be done is done. Is it a market activation that you want to put across, you want to initiate? Please indicate with timelines what you want to do and then make sure that it is being followed. What is the resource allocation for the actions or the activities you have to do? What are the key performance indicators or the key performance measurements? You have to determine all of those things. Key performance indicators should be available even from previous activities that have been done, how you performed and all that. So based on that, maybe previous sales or other forecast you did which you didn't go through or didn't work out, whatever, those can become good springboards for you to determine your performance measurements for the subsequent or the next project. Now, how is performance going to be recorded? This comes to evaluation, and you have to ensure that part of your action plan will consider assessment and evaluation. Of course, there should be something that you are measuring your performance against. What was your target last year? Were you able to achieve it? Based on that, what target are you setting for yourself this year? And what will be the performance indicators? Are you going to leverage on your strength as a company or a brand that has a good reputation or has a great character, a premier brand? Or is it, what are the strengths that you are going to depend on to make you perform better? Is it that you have good taste with your meals as a restaurant, or you want to leverage on quality that surpasses all other brands? Great. So use that to push your brand when it comes to action. The last one is control. We need to keep track of progress, and then we need to do action performance measurements and relate it to the objectives. I think I've mentioned this already. There should be something that you are measuring your performance against. There should be that yardstick or that that benchmark. It could be an industry benchmark. It could be a cooperative benchmark or something that you have to measure against. Now, responsibility for measurement, frequency of measurement. It means that whilst you are doing the project or the advertising campaign, there should be frequent assessments and different types of assessments taking place. You can, of course, do pre-testing, pre-assessment before the campaign, during the campaign, and then after the campaign. So pre, and then during, and then post. You can do midstream corrections. You can do all kinds of assessments. So make sure that you are doing this to promote your product, your brand, and to bring it to the point where indeed your business model, your business idea will not fail. If you follow these principles, you are likely to do well. I think I'll end part 2 for now, and then we'll come back for part 3. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to meet you again in the next lesson.